Hello YouTube, Mewtwo back with another reproduction update video. I would say following hot on the heels of my last one, given that it had been 4 or 5 months since update 3, but yeah, this is something that had been kind of worked on and off for a while. Now normally I kind of recap the last reproduction update, but I was making that one for a friend and I don't actually have a copy anymore, so I have nothing to show. So we'll get straight on to today's reproduction, and it is a classic. It is Frogger. Now in this case I've used the styling of the original arcade Frogger, but of course this is the Game Gear, this is the unreleased Game Gear game that was ported over to the Master System. So I always loved the style that Parker Brothers utilised in their early Frogger releases, typically on the Ataris and whatnot. I was actually going to take down my Frogger board game, which has this type of artwork. I call this the kind of classic Frogger art, but it was up on top of a press, buried behind a crap ton of stuff, so I was like, maybe not. And I also love the original Frogger logo. Now typically this would be attached to the kind of circled Frogger, and I had thought about changing up the artwork style that I use. Now ever since my first one I've been going after the kind of traditional Master System late release look. So that's the, as I've said many times, the kind of large squared artwork area and then the artwork spine. But Parker Brothers releases on the system, they used a sort of a middle ground. They had the traditional old grid, but they had a circle, kind of a pseudo circled area, and then they would have a more colourful artwork for the game logo. So if you look at games like King's Quest and Montezuma's Revenge, you see that sort of style, and that was generally Parker Brothers styling back in the kind of early to mid 80s when they were publishing games. But I decided that does break my flow, and I wanted them all to kind of adhere to the same standard, shall we say. So I took it apart and reworked it slightly, and I was thinking about adding more into the background, maybe making the background, instead of all uniform colour like it would have been in earlier releases, to perhaps have had imagery from the game. If you look at, say, the Asterix box art on the Master System, the way that that's done, where it has a circle and it has pixelated screens behind it. But in the end I didn't really like that, so I just decided to go with the plain background. One other addition, eagle-eyed people might notice, is that has the Konami logo. Now of course Frogger is a Konami property, they developed the game, but Sega had the distribution rights or something, I think it was, the original game. There's a whole mess behind the Frogger legal rights, and you might notice that by and large there wasn't a lot of follow-ups to the game for a long time. Even this game, the Game Gear game, never got released. It was fully developed and all that, but for whatever reason, I suppose we can only speculate, but perhaps a part of it was legal issues between Sega and Konami. So I decided that maybe a sort of a righting the wrong, but Marco, I've mentioned him before, Gordman on the Sega forums, had been interested in this, and I kind of showed him an early version, and we spoke about the Konami logo. I had actually been thinking about it, and he brought it up as well, so it was kind of like he was reading my mind. So I tried a few different Konami logos in different places, and I don't know, it just seemed fitting to have them back. And then I reproduced it on the side as well, so it's replication throughout the artwork. And the side is kind of following the theme of the late releases again. Which again, I really like that Frogger logo. There's something about it, the kind of slightly bulbous styling. And again, we have the Konami logo at the back, which is normally where a barcode would go, but because these aren't real products, I intentionally do not put barcodes on them. Now, I do create reasonably accurate product codes for them, but I feel that if you were to put a barcode on them, it kind of would be like you're presenting it more like it was real, and there's always the possibility of a person trying to then maybe resell them as real items. So I just didn't want to get into that, and there's been a whole debate on reproductions and the kind of legality of them, not even the legality, but whether or not it kind of fosters a bad practice where you have people trying to sell fake games as if they're real games, or games that were unreleased as if they're kind of rare exclusives, or just and worst of all, games that are rare, like say the Smurfs 2 or Championship Hockey, the way things are going, and just making a reproduction of that and looking to try and sell it for 100 or however many quid when it's just frankly not worth it. So there had been a whole big discussion on that, and I mean, I've never wanted my reproductions to be anything along those lines. Largely they're all for me, but if someone else has an interest, like Tears of Opa, or if someone would like to do a trade or something like that, I try and help out where I can. So anyway, that's kind of off topic, but it's all relative because it's all about reproductions and where you kind of stand on them. So back to the reproduction itself, we have the back of the box text. I found it actually hard to write this one because, I mean, what's there to say about Frogger, you know, that people don't already know? So I went back to the original release, to the original artworks and read them, and I kind of used them as kind of a launching pad for the style. In fact, the first line is the same. It's tough to be a frog. Life isn't all lazy days and lily pads, and then so on. But this game is different because it's not just a single screen, it scrolls, but in it you're also tasked with rescuing children. So that's where that, you know, leads on with the box text. So it goes, having survived dangerous motorways and treacherous riverways to make his way home, he finds his family missing. Looks like it's time for Frogger to leap back into action. Frogger really has his work cut out for him this time. 3 of his family members are spread throughout each of the game's large scrolling levels, and so on and so forth. So it was hard because, well, I always find these text stuff hard to write. It's one of the trickiest components, but yeah, it's also different to a typical. Have I got one here? Like a typical UK or Euro release will have essentially maybe 2 sentences. Look at the size of the writing; it's bloody tiny. In multiple languages, so that basically the space is filled up rather quickly with 2 lines. Now, if you do it all English, you gotta write a lot more, even using bigger fonts. So anyway, that's the artwork itself, and of course, inside it's the usual. Reproduce the game logo on the cartridge. There's my little game catalogue. And just to kind of go back over the point a little about reproductions, if you were to look through this, everything on this is basically a game that's a translated game or an unreleased item or content that you can't really buy, or you can't necessarily buy in a format that would work over here. So the story of Mio, or things like that, Japanese games with Japanese text ain't exactly going to work out too well. So these are kind of the reason why I want to make these. By and large, is they're something that I could never buy the real game. If I could, I would want to buy it. And Frogger is a perfect example of this. It's an unreleased Game Gear game, for God's sake, and that was then ported. Definitely something that's out of reach for almost everyone. And having played it, you know, it's a decent little game. If you like Frogger, you'll definitely give, you know, it's not mind blowing or anything, but it's an enjoyable little game, and it kind of puts a nice little twist on the Frogger gameplay, which really hadn't been seen at that point in time. But then this isn't strictly related to Frogger. It actually dates back to my very first one, the Sonic Triple Trouble one. I do have an extra item, and this is a little promo poster that I did it when I did Sonic Triple Trouble. In fact, this was done before the artwork to the game, and it is an editing of the original advertisement campaign for the Game Gear version. So they had Sonic skiing, or not skiing, snowboarding, because, you know, that's rad. And, you know, this guy, you know, playing the late Sonic game on his Game Gear, and a few screenshots and whatnot. Now, originally the text had something like "now available on the Game Gear" and a picture of the Game Gear box art. So I edited up the kind of artwork to reflect the fact that with this reproduction, now it was available on the Master System. So I finally got around to printing them out. The reason why I hadn't done it before is because I had expected this to be A3 size, and I don't have an A3 printer. But when I checked it again, I realized that I had gotten the DPI wrong. So it was a lot lower, or going to be a lot smaller than I expected, and I could scale it down to fit in to basically it'll be like a catalogue. So it fits into the game catalogue fine. So that's why that one got printed out a little bit late. And that's the story of Frogger, at least my reproduction of Frogger. I'll probably do a gameplay in the next little while of it too, just to kind of tie them in. I feel that I should probably make more of an effort to show the game as well as the artwork and what it's like, because not everyone, I suppose, is aware of them. And yeah, it's one thing to have the product sitting on a shelf, but it's also good to play them. And that brings me up to, what is it now? 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's the sixth reproduction, but of course fifth one for me in the series. So moving along slowly but surely. There we go. That's them all to date. And yeah, I hope now it's becoming kind of clear as well why I was sticking to the late release artwork style. When you have them kind of lined up on display, they have, you know, this, you know, continuous pictorial you know, interest. I find a lot of the Master artwork is very, you know, bland, and it just doesn't stand out, whereas I think this does. So there we go. Strike that off. Now I'll go and take another, you know, 6 months sabbatical from making reproductions. And well, given the cost of shipping has shot up recently, the practicality of sourcing components is not good. So who knows when the next one will be, but yeah, that's me rambling again. So we'll just leave it there. All that's left is to say thanks for watching, as always, and if you like what you see, please subscribe. Until next time.